Hello students. So today we are going to take a new topic and the topic is active and passive voice. Students, you have to understand that active voice and passive voice are linked with the tenses. So let's see today how we can study active and passive. There are two types of voice. One, active voice. The other one is known as passive voice. So what is active voice or passive voice? So let's see the difference. The first one, we all know in school that it was always taught to us that if there is no by in an active voice or in a sentence, it is considered as an active. Whereas if there is a by in a sentence, we consider that sentence as a passive voice. But this theory is absolutely wrong. So let's look at the new theory that we have in active voice and passive voice. It does not mean that we do not use the word by, but in most cases it is correct, but there are exceptions where this particular word by is not used. Know your voices. So let's see how we can differentiate between the active voice and the passive voice. Look at the example given over here. Ram writes a letter. When we say Ram writes a letter, Ram is the subject over here and letter is your object, and the action that has been done is to write. Now, who is doing this action? The subject is doing this action. So, when the subject is the doer of this action, this sentence is known as an active voice. So, let's look at the second example which is given over here. A letter was written by Ram. So, let's see what is this? A letter, Ram, and written. If you notice the difference between the first sentence and the second sentence, they have changed their place. That means the object in the first sentence has come to the second line as a subject, and the subject in the first sentence has gone as an object to the second line. So over here, the subject is not the doer of the action. A letter is not writing Ram, but a letter was written by Ram. So in this case, this particular sentence is a passive voice. I repeat, a subject is the doer of the action. This is an active voice. A subject which is not the doer of the action is known as a passive voice. So now let's see how we can change it from an active sentence to a passive sentence. Look at the example that is given to you. He eats cake. Now, this particular sentence again is an active sentence. We've been given two options. The cake is being eaten by him, or the cake was eaten by him. So we have to choose the right one, and the correct answer will depend on the tense of the action word, that is the verb. So let's see which is the correct answer. This is your correct answer. So let's see what are the rules that are applicable to convert an active sentence into a passive sentence with the help of the tenses. So look at this. We have 4 points over here. 1. We swap the subject and the object. That means the cake comes to the subject and he goes to the object. We add the to be in the correct form. The to be means the helping verb. So over here, the to be form is, we add the past participle of the main verb. Which is the main verb over here? The main verb is eats. So, in the second line also, it becomes eaten. So, that means eats is converted into eaten by past participle. And the last, we add the preposition by. In this way, we change or convert an active voice into a passive voice. So let's see the 4 rules. 1. We swap the subject and the object. 2. We add to be in the correct form, that is the helping verb. 3. We add the past participle of the main verb. Over here it is eat. And the last one is to add the preposition by. So now let's look at few more examples when an active sentence changes into a passive sentence in terms of tenses. As we all know, we have different types of tenses. So let's see how the active sentence changes its form holding the tense in the right form. The first one, simple present tense. Over here we have I write a letter, and the simple passive will be a letter is written by me. Look at the 4 rules. We swap the subject, we add the to be form, we add a past participle, and we add the preposition. In the same manner, we see the next one, simple past. I wrote a letter. Over here, a letter was written by me. The third, simple future. I will write a letter. Over here in the passive voice, it is a letter will be written by me. So this is the definition of a simple present, simple past, or a simple future tense. So let's look at the next, that is the present perfect. So how do we change from an active voice to a passive voice? The present perfect tense has I have written a letter, and in a present perfect passive it will be a letter has been written by me. Past perfect, I had written a letter. Past perfect passive, a letter had been written by me. Future perfect, I will have written a letter. Future perfect passive, a letter will have been written by me. So please students, make a note that all these are in your past participle, the main verb of your sentence. And now we look at the last one, that is the present continuous tense or the past continuous tense. As we all know, there is never a future continuous. So let's look at these 2 examples. The present continuous is I am writing a letter. The present continuous passive will be a letter is being written by me, and the past continuous is I was writing a letter, and past continuous passive will be a letter was being written by me. So students, always remember an active voice and a passive voice will only change when you know your tenses in the right form and use them correctly in your sentences. So students, let's see the different sentences, how we can convert a statement from an active voice to the passive voice. So the first example that we look at is an imperative sentence. Now, an imperative sentence means it's a suggestion, command, order, request, advice. So now let's see how we can convert an active sentence in an imperative voice into a passive voice. Now, the formula for the imperative sentence will always be let plus object plus be plus past participle. Look at the example given. Solve the sum. This is an active voice. The reason we have to use the word let is because many a times in an imperative sentence we do not have the subject. So over here again when we look at the sentence we do not have a subject. So the active voice is solve the sum. The passive voice is converted as let the sum be solved. Over here solve being your main verb gets converted to a past participle solved. You have the be and let which is added to the sentence. So now let's look at the other one which is known as sentences with modal auxiliaries. Now modal auxiliaries are known as helping verbs. Over here these modals will not change their form. So when they are there in an active voice, you will be retaining the same form and bringing them down into the passive voice. So let's see how that is done. So the formula for that is same modal auxiliary plus be plus past participle of the main verb. Look at the example given. In the first one that is told to you is, I can play the guitar. Over here, can is your modal auxiliary which shows ability. So when we convert this active sentence into a passive sentence, it will be, the guitar can be played by me, retaining the same modal auxiliary, adding be and using the past participle of the base verb, that is play, turns to played. The third example is sentences with prepositional verb. Now, what is the meaning of a prepositional verb? You will have the verb along with the preposition. We cannot divide them. The entire set of the word has to be carried forward the same way. So, let's look at it. So, what will be the structure for that? Past participle plus the preposition. So, look at the example given here. In the active voice, it is the bird pecks at the flower. So, over here, you have the prepositional verb pecks at. So, when we convert this sentence from an active voice to a passive voice, we bring down the entire preposition. That means, in the passive voice, this statement gets converted to, the flower is pecked at by the bird, using the past participle of pecks being pecked along with the preposition at. So, over here we do this, pecked at by the bird. Now, let's look at the other example given over here, and that is sentences with two objects. Students, when you have a sentence with two objects, you can convert the active voice into passive voice in two different ways. One, retaining this object as a main object and converting the second object as a subject, or you can convert the first object as the subject and retain the second one as the object. But remember, one object has to be retained the same way. So, let's look at the example that is given. The sentence is in the active voice, he gives me a haircut. Over here, we have two objects, me and a haircut. So, obviously, in the passive, you will have two answers. Let's see how we convert it. A haircut is given to me by him. If you remember, students, the four rules, we follow the same thing. Gives gets converted to given, which is the past participle. We add by and we swap the subject and the object. The second answer is also right, where we use me as a subject. I am given a haircut by him. Over here again, we swap the subject and the object. Now, let's look at the interrogative sentences. Interrogative sentences mean questions. So, over here, we do not change the question form and make them affirmative. We retain them in the question form. So, let's see how we do it. In the active voice, we use, does he drink milk? Over here, we have to use the word is. Use the past participle of the main verb drink, make it into drunk. And we retain the question mark and keep the sentence as a question. So, let's go over it again. In the active, does he drink milk? It's a question. In the passive, is milk drunk by him? Again, is a question or an interrogative statement. So, students, let's move ahead and see now how we can change the passive voice to active voice. Now, over here, all you have to remember, though it is easy, it can get tricky because you have to undo the 4 points that we had already learned before converting it from active to passive. So now when we are converting it from passive to active, you have to remember these things. Swap the subject and object, remove the to be form, remove past participle, and remove the preposition. So keep in mind the tenses and follow these 4 steps. So let's look at the examples that are given to us. The queen's necklace was stolen by the thief. This is a passive voice because we have all the needed points over here. Stolen, past participle, preposition by, and we have already swapped the object and the subject. So the active voice over here will be the thief stole the queen's necklace. Thief being the subject, stole being your verb, and the queen's necklace being your object. Let's look at the second sentence. The deer is being chased by them. This again is a passive voice. Using these 4 rules, we change it to they were chasing the deer. And the last example that has been given over here has a little bit of a trick in it. I have been asked to bring back a vaccine for a horse. Now over here, when we convert a passive to an active, if you notice, we have used the word they. For the simple reason, over here the subject has been missing. So you can add on a subject. So we say active voice, they have asked me to bring back a vaccine for a horse. So students, keep in mind these 4 steps or rules when you have to convert a passive into an active voice. 1. Swap the subject and the object. 2. Remove the to be form. 3. Remove the past participle. And last, remove the prepositions.